Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Today is Monday, May 26th. So I had kind of a weird day. I started my video today. I had a headache that I had on Saturday, was gone on Sunday, came back last night, and I started to progress and got worse today, and then it is mostly gone. Now I feel better. But I had this sort of realization I want to talk about this. Unconditional love is the only true love. There's no conditional love. There's no such thing as conditional love. Love is always unconditional. Like people say, I want to be loved unconditionally, or I want to love unconditionally, or, there is only, love in its truest form is God. God is love. God is God is and, I'm not really a machine, but like a machine that his only product is unconditional love. Or it's unconditional love itself that produces unconditional love, right? And so, love is always unconditional. If there's conditions to love, it's something else, right? So, love is a feeling. And that's why love can be expressed to somebody, a child or a loved one or a relative or even a spouse or somebody who turns out to be a real piece of shit, right? And, maybe mistreats you. And you can't help but feel love for them. You don't like them. You don't like you don't like the person, but you can't help but feel love because love is unconditional. I mean, that's the great thing about love, and it's a great thing about God. God, you can say God loves unconditionally, but God is unconditional love, and that unconditional love exists inside each person. And so, there was a talk by, I think, Master Charji, the third master of the Sajmark system, about that in Persian, there's like 40 different words or 100 different words for love. In some other language, there's another, so many words for love. But in English, there's one word. And people use the word love when they're talking about, oh, I'm getting all this love, like a person would perform, a singer would perform for so many different people, for an audience, for a crowd. And say, "Oh, I feel your love." They would applaud, and you say there's love in the applause, but that's adoration, right? That's there's different what people would think of as love. So people's definition of love is sexual love, for example, or the love that's it's a there's it's more than just sexual desire. There's also affection, right? But these types of things, which are you could say they're forms of love, but love in its truest form, and the thing that should only be called love, is unconditional. It's not, there's nothing that creates a reason for you to love, right? It isn't like somebody treats you really well and you therefore love them, or somebody's really nice and you therefore love them, or they've done something for you and they've you therefore love them. In these old ancient, not ancient, pretty even recent arranged marriages in India, the whole idea would be that after being around somebody for a long time, you would love them. You would just love who you were around. You love the people, your coworkers and things. People you spend a lot of time with, you inevitably love in some capacity. It's in some way unconditionally with the feeling of love, right? The feeling of love is there, and it's always there. Like, it's not something that, when love is there for something or somebody at its purest form, it's always unconditional. And, longevity and being around somebody, that's why you see these married couples that stay together, and they may not even like each other. They may argue. They might have, whatever their differences. And so even maybe get divorced, but the love is still there. Like, they still have a place in their heart for the other person. And people don't understand that, right? Because, to say I love you is, sometimes it's actual love that you feel, and sometimes it's something you feel in your heart, which is the feeling of unconditional love. But, it's unconditional love is something where, it stands the test of time, and nothing interferes with it. It just exists for some people. It's like some people you're meant to love, and some other people you're not. Like, there's people who on paper they check all the boxes, or they seem like nice people, but you just don't have that feeling for, right? And someone else has numerous other difficult qualities, shitty qualities, unlovable qualities, unlikable qualities, and yet the love is still there. I shouldn't be an expert on this thing. I just don't have the personality for it, but I have a very loving heart because of, whatever I've done in the past. I feel love quite substantially. The transmission, the Sajmark system is unconditional love. It's divinity. A couple things about it. Like, for example, everybody has love in their hearts. Everyone has some godly energy in their hearts. But it can get covered up or just used up, can diminish over time. And that's where people think love is lost. But oftentimes, like this, the love is worn out, or it's hidden, or it's eclipsed by grosser forms of things. People end up not having the capacity to love. Some people are so gross when they're born, as they live their lives. They've created such these things called samskaras, things that are impediments to you feeling the divinity in your heart. They never feel true love. Like it doesn't exist in them. Okay, so I stopped doing this voiceover yesterday, and today's Tuesday, May 27th. I'm going to continue it today. And so, there is a kind of circuit that happens when people love each other, where love flows in a circuit, right? There's electricity, like there's this electric ball that has two metal points on it. It's like a ping pong ball that has a light inside of it. And if you touch the 2 points, it'll light up, like, because you have electricity in your system. And it's kind of the point. The metal points are pretty big on the ball, and the ball is needs a very limited amount of electricity, very small amount of electricity to generate light. But if you are in a circle, people will if you have one person touch one point and then hold hands with other people, another person, and it goes in a circle, complete circuit. You make a circuit with a circle of people. And there's two people on either side who are not touching each other, but each one is touching a point, and they're connected to the circuit. The ball will light up. So this energy flows in between people. Your energies are affected. Your energetic self, the part of you that's atomic and on an energetic level, is affected by other people's energy. And love most of all, right? So you have this internal love, and if you love somebody and they return the love, it's a circuit. It's magnified to whatever extent. But you're limited to the amount of love that's inside your system, and as your life goes on, you wear that love out, like you use up that energy, and things come in, grossness, tendencies, and negative, some scars, patterns of behavior. And so your love gets diminished. Or, people love, one person loves more, or there's more love flowing from them, this kind of thing, right? And so, inevitably, your love gets depleted. Or, when you're just worn out in life and beaten down, and, it's like your light, people's inner light fades. Their light is extinguished. You see people who are just dead inside. This is the zombification, the ghoulification of people, where they, turn into NPCs because there's no connection to their prana. It's there because they're still alive. You have to have some love to be alive. You have to have some, there's some unconditional love, God love in your system. I mean, kids are getting drained by their parents, and now, of course, the internet, things like this. And so it either gets covered up, it's there, but people can't access it because they're too gross. There's too much other, impressions, other things that are occupying their internal world, or their love gets diminished, or usually a combination of the two. And so external outputs or internal inputs from the divinity that surrounds everything. The idea of the Force in Star Wars, which is The force is a bad word, but because it's a power, which love isn't a power. Love is power in dormant state, right? It's a forceless force, the Pranhuiti and the Sajmark system. And so the Sajmark system, the transmission is divine love that is made available that everybody needs. So it's something that shouldn't have to be sold. Like, like people are so unaware that they need love, and they should like crave it and find it without even knowing what it is. There should be something seeking that out inside people. That there is, like, it's like going to the refueling station, because everybody needs love on a nutritional basis. Like on a, they need it to be, they need their love banks restored, and it's available in a meditative system. I mean, it's also there when people connect to God on their own, but it's, even more so. It's like a, difference between just sort of absorbing it from the atmosphere as opposed to going to like a gas station and getting it, a big dose of it, right? It's like absorbing energy from just the, atmosphere where there's energy there, right? But it's a big difference between doing that. It's like people getting nurtured by the sun, and they don't even know it. You're physically nurtured by being out in sunlight. Of course, vitamin D people know about, but there's also mitochondrial kind of activity, mitochondrial melatonin and things, and other stuff that's happening that you're receiving from the sun. But people are, they don't like to go out to the sun. They don't want to be outside, right? They don't want to be. I mean, just not even the sun, but all of nature. All these things. There's energy coming off of all of this stuff, but people are, especially these younger people, are, they stop knowing what's good for them. They are repelled by what's like nutrition. Like they want to be deprived of this kind of, when they can only eat processed foods. Like if they try to eat raw foods and, healthy foods, produce and things like this, when they look at it, they don't know what to do with it. And when they eat it, they can't eat it. But like they eat these like chicken McNuggets and these death foods, these processed foods. And that's what they think their body learns to feed on, those kind of things, even though they're not nutritious and they're toxic and they are causing all kinds of physical issues. They're causing heart disease and cancer and all these other things, but that's what their body learns is nutrition, and they get so gross and warped that the things that actually make them healthy, there's like a vampire can't go out in the sunlight. They can't absorb all these things. They get repelled by health. And so it's like a sad state of affairs, because like I shouldn't have to say to people, there's something out there where you can get your love bank recharged. People should just find it, right? Like it's just something that should be inside of you. Like you could, if you're, animals can locate water, and they can locate whatever, find food and sniff around, use their instincts and their senses to find food and all the things that they need. Like they just have to go out. A wild animal wakes up and it goes and gets all kinds of mice and or grass or whatever it eats, right? And it finds places where the food is at, and they find water, and they find what they need. They just wake up and like it's just this abundant world, and people can't do that. Like people have no idea what's like you can go out into the woods and there's all these things to eat. Like 97% of all 96 or 7% of all plant life, and of course some of it's yucky, like bark and things that's hard, but it's edible. Like there's very few poisonous things out there. The rest of the stuff has nutrition in it and can be used as food. And so people know how to forage, and certainly some are easier to eat than others and easier to process, and all these types of things. But there's an abundance of food out there, but people have no idea what to eat and what not to eat and how to access it, and they don't learn all these things, and they become dependent, and and they just start eating poison, and they think that's food, and they think that's nutrition, and then the rest of the things happen with it. But at the basis of all this, they want God's love in its purest form, because it nurtures you on a soul level, on a spiritual level, and then on a physical level, and everything else. Like everything is God at its center. It's fundamental building block of all of creation. Without God, there's nothing. And so that's when people say God created the universe, yes, but not as some kind of a person, right? Not as some kind of a even soul, as something that's all pervading, like that's everywhere. A mindless, egoless force that is there. Not force, but energy. Even energy, it's more subtle than that, right? So unconditional love is that love is available at all times for all people, and so there's no sense of, any of these types of things where you have to be a good person or you have to earn it or you have to deserve it. It's just there. It's just all pervading, and so people can't access it. That's the sad thing. With all our great accomplishments and things that we separate us from the other creatures on this planet, all the buildings, all the things we've created, all the everything that we've done, we're disconnected from the source, and there's like it shouldn't be something that you'd have to sell to people. There should be some internal part of them that wants to reconnect with the source, and they just won't do it. And even people who do struggle, like they, and oftentimes it's a self-deprecating, self-hating part of people that they don't think they deserve God's love or whatever happens, and they run away from it, right? And so you have lonely, desperate people who are, there's all this all-pervading, unconditional love in the universe, and they can't access any of it after, from their own actions and their own, they're willfully blocking it from happening. There's one thing I wanted to read, and then we'll move on to my video here. Okay, I have a handheld mic, and I always when I go to read it, I put it on my chest, which I'll do in a second, so my voice will change. But in the Sajmark system, it works where when you get these sittings, either a group sitting where there's a person, a preceptor, the master of the system sits there and is a conduit for this transmission and cleaning to happen. And in an individual sitting, you sit about 5 feet apart, across from each other. And the person transmits to you, the preceptor or the master, and cleans your internal world, and then this transmission flows through their hearts into the heart of the person receiving the sitting. And Master Charji, the third master of the system, kept a very comprehensive or meticulous diary. And he got a lot of spiritual sittings and things from Babaji, who was preparing him to be the next master of the system. And there's this one excerpt, it's one of my favorite excerpts in the literature of the system. He had this reaction, I'm going to read it to you. Babaji's giving him a sitting, so he's going to Babaji's house, and he lived in the southern part of India, in the part that would be Florida. And Babaji lived where, Minnesota or Michigan would be in America. So there was some distance there, in a different climate. But Charji would travel up there, and, he was, running the mission as the secretary of the mission. He was in charge of all the, donations and the building of ashrams and the keeping of, a list of members and these things, right? He was, he did all the organizational type of stuff. And then he would go to northern India whenever he got a chance to visit Babaji. So this is from 1977. It's an entry from the diary on April 2nd, 1977. So Babaji would die in 1983, so this is towards the end of his life. It's the third edition in his Footsteps, Volume 3. And he says, my master, master means Babaji. Master then gave us a short sitting of about 15 minutes duration, much to the unconcealed joy of the Abhyasis present, who had not expected such a blessing on this occasion. So they were traveling to Andhra Pradesh, which I'm not really sure offhand where that was. It's in the northern part of India. I felt tears coming to my eyes, I recalled, without any volition on my part. Even the merest wish to do so, all the wonderful qualities of my beloved master. The thought spontaneously arose and automatically in my mind, and I seemed to recall, as if in recollection, Master's divine love for his Abhyasis, his unfailing courtesy, his gentlemanly behavior, even with the smallest of us, his permanent cheerfulness, his humor, etc. The thought came to my mind that perhaps this was an aspect of the cleaning too. Perhaps the impressions created in my mind by these qualities of the master, noble though they are, have also to be erased by the cleaning. This was the next thought, the reason being that otherwise the love for the master, which may be there, would be love conditioned by the existence of these very qualities in the master. A love dependent on these five qualities for its existence would be no true love. A further thought then surfaced. We human beings are all conditioned to our loves mainly because of the presence of such qualities in those whom we love. Take away those qualities, and the love too fades away. But true love must exist without beloved having necessarily to possess any of such qualities whatsoever. Then alone could the love be called true love. The thought then expanded into this next thought. Our master loves us precisely in this way. Nay, even when he would be justified in not loving us, such as an Abhyasi that has repulsive and hateful qualities, even then master is able to love the Abhyasi. I then had a glimmering of the idea of a sort of timid realization of what divine or universal love really is. Such a love pervades everything in the universe because such a love does not need any qualities or characteristics to love and therefore exist independently of all qualities in the beloved, good, bad, or indifferent. All these qualities came into my mind during this brief sitting and revealed to me the nature of the cleaning process, how deeply it has to probe, and how comprehensive it has to be in its application and functioning. So, in the Sajmark teachings, there was a saying, love all whom he loves, meaning God, but also the master of the system, because a person who has relinquished their ability to do anything of their own volition, to make the wrong decisions, and will only do what God wants them to do, then has to, embrace this universal love principle, where they love everybody that comes to them, they love everyone in the world, they love everything in the world, they are conduits for this divine love, and they can't help but do that. They're given up the choice not to love, right? Which is kind of one of the fundamental choices where people would, there's this free-flowing love. You have this divine love inside of you. And it's like you put a faucet where you're being a conduit and you turn it off because people don't deserve it, right? Like somebody does something horrible, you love them, and, they do something horrible to you or something else, and, you want to turn the love off, like you don't want to give them the love anymore because of, their abhorrent qualities, right? But somebody who's reached this divine stage and, even on the path, the love flows freely and you can't help but to love, right? Because that's the divinity within you. When you're a realized soul, when the self within is being actualized, you love without conditions, right? That's unconditional love. Actually, the saying was, love the one who loves all. Which was you would love him who loves the one who loves all and love all. So the idea was, the love that people would have for Babaji, the second master of the system, and through that he loved everybody, and you would love everybody through that system. Like there would be this, again, unconditionally, because people suck. Like there's not an acknowledgement that people don't deserve it from their behavior, or they do things purposely to deny themselves love. Like that's the other part of it. They are, willfully doing things to cut themselves off from the love. They say that they love themselves. They say that they're there's this narcissistic talk, like somebody like Trump, for example. But Trump is, willfully being abhorrent in various ways. I mean, he's finding ways to get, love from his dopey supporters, but, in reality, he's doing things to be repulsive, right? Like, and he's narcissistic, and you think the guy, well, he loves himself, but he doesn't. There's some, self-hatred there. Behaving in ways because you want to push that, disconnect yourself from the divine love and then from other people. And then complain about it and feel like a victim, right? But in reality, it's self-inflicted. people have these things inside of them. There's, insecurities and, whatever it is, like self-hatred and, whatever, the inner dialogue and things that they've heard from other people. And so they act in a way to push people away and to separate themselves from the divinity within them, and so that they don't feel the love because they don't feel like they deserve it, right? There was a woman practitioner of the system who was friends with my ex, and she seemed like a very nice person. As far as I knew, she was a really good person, but, she didn't do her practice regularly, and she didn't feel like she deserved to go get sittings or whatever because she wasn't able to meditate, because of kids and, difficult marriage or whatever it might be, right? And I was kind of surprised by this because it's like if you read the books, it doesn't matter what you're doing, or even if you quit, it's like even, you do something negative, you're supposed to come back and be welcome back because, it's not about whether you earned it or deserved it. It's about helping people redeem themselves, right? And like there's there wouldn't be a system like this in divinity itself and right now at this time in history if it was about whether you deserved it or not, because most people don't. I mean, everybody does it to some extent. It's not about deserving, it's about accepting something that's there for everybody, everything in the universe. The divine unconditional love is there for everybody, and it's needed, something you need, and something that can elevate you, that can inspire you to go to higher levels and help you evolve. Like I said at the beginning of this thing, true love is unconditional. So anyways, just to wrap this up, so there was this saying, love him who loves all and love all. And then Charji said, love all who he loves. Because people couldn't get along. Right? Like it was kind of a joke on the first saying. Because the master of the system loved all, and you should be able to love, your brothers and sisters, no matter how abhorrent they are, because you yourself has exhibited these behaviors, right? You have had these behaviors in your own existence, your negative behaviors, like you were, like I was, like like a selfish punk when I was younger, these things, right? We all go through things. It's like when you look at your kids and you judge them, but then you remember how you were when you were their age, and you're like, yeah, I was the same way, and, you see them differently as you've evolved and you've become a better person, hopefully, as a parent, and more giving and more selfless. But then you have these selfish kids, and you're like, oh, these kids suck or whatever. But then you realize, you were what you were like at that age, right? And so there's this element. But there's just no generosity in the world anymore, and everybody expects everyone else to be better than them. They have a standard for themselves, a much lower standard than they have for everybody else. And so, that's why this selfish system and, all that it does, and the deep inner, self-hatred that pretty much everybody has for being, something that's an abomination of to what they're, were created to be. And so that's why, this idea of conditional love, because people are oblivious to the fact that it's unconditional, it's there for everybody, and there should be just a world full of it. And it should be, radiating out of each person's heart for everything and everybody. But that, doesn't really exist. All right, let's get into some of the other stuff here. Okay, let's show you this right here. I'm having a weird day.
Comme ça, c'est le plus. Voilà. Alors, vous l'avez vu, le président est arrivé au Vietnam.
So this guy's dues just pushed him in the face. My wife sent me this, and then one of my viewers sent me this. So I had a massive migraine yesterday. Let's show the action shot here. Right here. Boom. I had a weird migraine. Like, it wasn't like the pain of migraines isn't like the worst part, the ones that I get. It's that, like, I get sensitive to everything. Like, I'm sensitive to touch, light, noise, visual things, and certainly hearing. And like, there's no serotonin, there's no, there's nothing that's enjoyable. It's like anything that's, there's no, like, happiness or pleasure or any kind of thing like that. And, you know, the world is just overwhelming. Like, it's just, you know, people who get migraines know what I'm talking about. But it isn't the pain itself. The pain in my head is bearable. It's and then nausea. Like, I have stomach stuff. So my stomach's upset. I get nauseous, and, you know, tightness in my jaw, and just this. My senses are overstimulated, and it's just like I feel like crap. Sometimes I have these nervous system issues, like I get cold or hot, you know, or whatever, have chills, and it's like I'm glitching out. And so that happened yesterday, and I came out of it, which was good, but it kind of got worse. Like, it was just the headache came back on from a day before. It had gone away on Sunday. I felt really good on Sunday, and, you know, I had a bunch of things to get to. It's like sort of I had to. Today's the day I do the sitting, which I have to do, still have to do, an individual sitting, and then I have to. There's a bunch of other things I have to do, and I opened up I just got my computer updated, and it was not working great when I shut it down, and I put my regular mouse away, and I was using the key mouse pad, and I must have opened up a bunch of bookmarks, 3,000 of them. Most of them were videos from YouTube that no longer exist, that were deleted, probably banned videos. So it must have been some of my old Truther bookmark folders, and I must have opened up enough, so I had to close 3,000 tabs, and I really didn't have a choice, and it was just a real bummer. So that was what was up with me. That's my morning. But let's get into the other thing here. King Cudi says Diddy broke into his family home and unwrapped his family's Christmas presents. Now he's crossed the line. I mean, human trafficking is bad enough, but he's unwrapping people's kids' Christmas presents. Like, one of my viewers sent me this, just to add a little bit more detail. So when I updated my computer, and I had the migraine, so I'm shutting it down. I really feel like shit, and I'm using the mouse and it has this, like, glitching out. The computers on Apple, they have this like little spinning circle, which usually you never get. I used to get a lot more with the PCs. My wife's computer just shut down, like, immediately, without, like, warning today. So we've both been having issues. I don't know if it's Mercury in retrograde, but so I think I might have been hitting buttons, or like something happened, because the mouse wasn't working great, and the computer wasn't working great. It had whatever it did to, oftentimes when they do these updates, there's some issues. It used to be really bad with the Microsoft. Like, I remember it being like, putting off getting an update as long as I possibly could, and reading about what the possible outcomes were, the nightmare stories people were having over it. But so yeah, there's that. So one of my viewers sent me this. I think a lot of times people send me things and they're not watching my videos. There are people who send me, there's no context to what they're sending me. They don't write anything themselves. They just send me links to things. And so I'm not sure what their perspective is, or reason for sending it to me is. Oh my God, Trump just dimmed the lights in the Oval Office and played for the president of South Africa the brutal videos of South African leaders calling for the killing of white South African farmers. There is this element within the white community where I have heard over the years that black people wanted to be slaves or lived here already. They didn't come from Africa, or a number of these theories, right? And it's, this not wanting to take responsibility. Like, human beings, we're all responsible, or connected. I want to say responsible, but connected to the worst of us to the best of us. I mean, it's something that should give us hope, not despair, because we're all connected to and related to, because we're connected, biologically in some way, and then spiritually to the highest developed people, Jesus, and, these other saints. I mean, Jesus was not, I was talking about this in an earlier video. There's, things within, like Jesus, when he was around, he didn't have any followers. He had 12 disciples, who 3 of them turned on him, and a bunch of other people. Because when his teachings were at its best, when his energy was there, his example, when he was, when Christianity was at its peak, was when Jesus was alive. Christianity has gone downhill ever since Jesus was alive. And so I can speak about that because of my own experience, certainly in this life, but probably in past lives, that when there's a spiritual being, it's the best time. When Jesus was alive, that was the best time to be a Christian. And it wasn't called being a Christian then, because it wasn't a religion. Jesus didn't have a religion. He didn't have any of these things. So there was no religion. He was just imparting spirituality, and that was when, if you had the opportunity to be around him then, that was the best time to do what is now called Christianity. And over time, they started watering the shit down. This is what I was trying to say in my last, video, whatever it was. And so when they started to water it down is when, it was at its peak in terms of when you dumb down and you use manipulation and these types of things, that's when you can bring people in. And that's the sad state of affairs in the human race. Because people won't take Christianity at its best. People who are Christians wouldn't accept Jesus. If Jesus reincarnated, they saw him, they wouldn't accept what he looked like. They wouldn't accept what he was saying. All these things, right? That's, most Christians wouldn't be Christians. They wouldn't accept Jesus in his true form. It's the dumbed down, marketed form that's given in religions. And that's just how it is. And so anyways, there's some element where people are like, who aren't even connected to you, want to defend or rearrange history to make white people not as bad as they were, or, any group like Native Americans or any of these other Asians and black people and, all these various ethnic groups around the world, LGBTQ, like all these people want to make themselves better because they identify with some group, and it's silly. It's very easy to admit people do shitty things. It's just, and it's everywhere. It isn't like one group is worse than others. Like they all have their different tendencies. There is differences between the races and, the ethnic groups. There's difference between men and women. But the bottom line is there's really good people and there's a lot of shitty ones, And so, that's just how it is. And Trump is a shitty one. Like, this guy probably is a shitty one, too. I don't know much about him. And, I don't know all the history about South Africa and these things. And it's debatable. But, even if you live in the country, people say, well, I'm from South Africa. Yeah, I'm sure you know more about South Africa than I do because you live there. And that's, no question. But you don't know all of it, right? You know very little of it. Because I know very little of America, because it's a vast country, but all these countries are quite big. You don't even know all the things to know in your city, in your state, or all the things that are going on, right? There's secrets and fucking buried dead, there's the dead body, where the dead bodies are buried, kind of stuff all over the place, right? Knowing where all the bodies are buried. Like, there's a lot of bodies that are buried out there, and people would be shocked to know what those secrets contain, right? But anyways, so a few things. Let's start here. I want to talk about the vax a little bit here. So, there was a time where if you talked about the vax, you would get a community guideline strike for medical misinformation. And it's really bad when that changes in a way where, if it was so dangerous that you made so many of us suffer because we couldn't post things about the COVID situation when, I had COVID and I dealt with it in an alternative medical way and I had information to share. I put it up recently, some of it, and I started doing I always wanted to do like an audio book on Amazon or something because I couldn't do it here. And I did it on that other fucking, whatever, the Rumble or whatever it was, and didn't really get any views, and it was a whole, waste of time. And, I don't like Rumble as a format. But I guess I could put those videos up. I still have them in a folder and then make the rest of them, whatever. I don't know if I'll do that because, it's just, I don't think people care, and it's kind of everyone's moved on, and, I don't know how much the information will be helpful to, whatever. But, I had information to share at the time. And YouTube and Google were compromised, I think in part because of well, certainly in part because Pfizer runs a lot of ads and Big Pharma runs a lot of ads on YouTube. And there are all these things going on. There's things that Kennedy's doing that are actually good things. But now it seems like you can talk about these things. And if it was so bad to talk about them when it was happening, then why would you be able to talk about them now? And certainly outside of YouTube, they're being talked about. And the world isn't crumbling. And as it turned out, COVID, the anti-vaxxers did not do any damage to the COVID situation. Like that's pretty much admitted to by everybody. That COVID and the vaccine wasn't what got rid of COVID. It mutated itself out of existence. So all of that, Operation Warp Speed and all the things that went with it were unnecessary. So this happened here.
Hi, everybody. I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr., your HHS Secretary, and I'm here today with NIH Director Dr. Jay Bhattacharya and FDA Commissioner Dr. Marty Makary. I couldn't be more pleased to announce that as of today, the COVID vaccine for healthy children and healthy pregnant women has been removed from the CDC recommended immunization schedule.
He's pretty happy about it.
Last year, the Biden administration urged healthy children to get yet another COVID shot despite the lack of any clinical data to support the repeat booster strategy in children.
That ends today. It's common sense and it's good science.
There's no evidence healthy kids need it today, and most countries have stopped
Forbes fucked this guy with Ted Cruz.
recommending it for children.
We're now one step closer to realizing President Trump's promise to make America healthy again.
Yeah, and have a fucking Big Mac too while you're at it. But it's positive. Like this is a positive thing. Okay, so here's the other piece.
Encouraging every single one to get a booster every year. That is the outlier contrarian approach.
They've been doing this thing lately where they've been putting, I guess this is because they want, split screen. Like the split screen stuff. Why make things more complex? Like, if you've ever seen Indian news, they have so many tickers and like ads and stuff, right? It's like, maybe I could show you that at some point. I'll do that after I'm done with this little clip here.
Approach.
So up until this point, COVID vaccines in the U.S. have been updated each fall in a similar way to seasonal flu shots to try to best match circulating strains and provide better protection. The CDC had recommended annual COVID boosters for everyone over the age of 6 months. Now, the new plan from the FDA maintains that system, but only for people over the age of 65 or for younger people with risk factors putting them at high risk for severe COVID.
Yeah, so they were giving the boosters, or they wanted to give the boosters. Most people weren't getting them anyway. It's optional at this point, but they're recommending it for kids who are like 6 months old and older. And now it's not that. And if nothing's going to happen, like there's not going to be a COVID outbreak or there's not going to be any, outcome to this, which there's not, then they could have done this under the Biden administration, right? Like there's preventative care, which is to boost your immune system through natural means. The pharmaceutical drugs, you can look it up. There's nothing that boosts your natural immune system. In fact, there are many drugs where the side effects are obviously caused by taking down your immune system. So there's pharmaceutical drugs, many of them that'll actually make your immune system weaker, and then you're more susceptible to these other side effects, right? Like most of the side effects, anything like an infection and these things, is because your immune system isn't as strong to fight it off. And so they are not there to naturally boost your immune system, which I said before COVID happened. Like when I said this like a year, I said there's probably something coming. My viewers pointed this out. And what I'm going to do, I'm not recommending anything to anybody else, but what I'm going to do is work on boosting my immune system, which of course I didn't. Because I ended up getting COVID, but I wanted to, but I just didn't get around to it. But it worked out because now my immune system is I think much stronger and, going through this, and I feel like I've gotten the COVID thing under control in my body because I think it's one of those things that your body's just fighting off constantly. I got it for 3 years, and then I think my body just adapted to the whatever was left inside this unnatural biological weapon they fucked us with, right? But anyways, it's something where if you are getting this, whatever medication, in this case a vaccine, and if you're giving it to young kids who haven't even developed an immune system till they're about a year old, like what the fuck, right? Like that's, there's something else going on here, right? If you're giving people something they don't need, that isn't, preventing anything like a widespread pandemic from reoccurring, because the thing's mutated itself out of existence, so it's no longer what it was when it first started, then, it's almost like this was a test run for something worse later on. I mean, that's what I assume all this is. And it's a complete fucked up thing because, they don't do things in a logical way. As scientific as they claim to be, you would need a logical reason to continue giving people a shot for something that's already, mutated itself into something that isn't like what it originally was. And so there's no longer a need for the shot, these kind of things.
Things like asthma, diabetes, and obesity. For healthy people under the age of 65, the agency now says it'll require longer clinical trials, which experts say likely means that...
See, like, that doesn't make sense because what they're saying is healthy people. Now, healthy people have a better immune system. And what they're doing is trying to trigger your immune system by putting things that are like the disease but aren't the disease, that are, your body represents as something bad, right? It's something that's like your body's like, oh, this should not be in my body. Your body's like, this, get rid of this thing. We have to generate we're being attacked by this vaccine. So let's generate an immune system response. And that immune system response will also fight off COVID. So those antibodies will be in your system. So why would that be better for unhealthy people who don't have a good immune system, right? Because their immune system is questioned, and so the vaccine, just like the virus, their body can't put out a quality response. Like, it's something that would be better for healthy people who have a good immune system. Like, it doesn't make any logical sense, right? What they're saying.
That group won't be eligible for updated shots this fall. CDC data show that nearly 3/4 of Americans aged 6 months and older have an underlying medical condition that puts them at higher risk. The policy of targeting shots to the elderly and more vulnerable more closely aligns...
It's about depopulation.
The U.S. with recommendations in other countries.
Let's get rid of this. We're thinning the herd.
But experts raised concerns that shots should still be available for very young children who have high rates of hospitalization from COVID. And some point out that nobody should lose the option to get a COVID vaccine.
Exactly. Everyone should have that option. Just, I want that option. Personally, I want that option to be totally fucking available. There's lots of people that I would be very happy if they got it. I got one more thing to get to here. Okay, so this is... a video called COVID-19 Vaccine Risks Revealed in Senate Hearing. It's interesting they called it COVID-19 because it really didn't hit to 2020, although many people said they had it in 2019, including some of my viewers. But this exchange happened here.
Not aware anybody on my side of this issue has politicized it. The accusation is always that we're not. You did state, by the way, 10,000 lives saved in Hawaii. I would love to have your citation on that. So if you can give us a study so we can put that in the record. And any other citation, give us on the millions of lives saved by vaccines as well. I mean, I want to know the truth. Just real quick, I've got a couple other charts I want to put up there. This is a chart a lot of people produced it.
Chairman, if I could just interrupt for 10 seconds over here.
Sure.
Is today's, just a point of order, are we talking about vaccines or are we talking about the COVID vaccine?
Well, specifically, we were talking about the hiding of the safety signal on myocarditis.
So we're not talking about all vaccines?
We can talk about anything you want to.
Okay.
I mean, again, it has obviously opened up because we're also talking about the corruption of science. And I think science has been corrupted. So fair game.
So, science in its purest form is limited because it doesn't, there's things that aren't, your soul can never be this God in your soul and, spiritual stuff. The etheric universe, etheric things cannot be studied by, they don't exist in the material world. There's no scientific instrument that can to go to that range. But within the physical third dimensional reality, science in its purest form can be factual and it can be authentic, right? It can be certainly valuable. But the problem is there are scientists, which are people, and there are corporations who have money and governments who have money, and they can buy scientists. So science, like religion, like anything else, can be corrupted because somebody with money comes in and or power and gets greedy and decides to, water down or actually distort or lie about the results of the science or results of the spirit, like the same way they twisted Jesus' teachings to market the religion, the same way scientists will twist their data or game their data or do things to produce an outcome that isn't scientific, that is, that's financially or power based in its motivation, and so and its outcome. And so, this is what he's probably talking about here.
So, and again, I appreciate you staying here. Stick around and ask a lot of questions. I think you'll learn an awful lot. Put my time back on the clock. No, I'll take whatever I want. This is a chart. This is a chart. Again, I was looking at the Vayers. I had been.
Mr. Chairman, that's not the way I ran this subcommittee.
I had been, this is.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't rub that, so I didn't give myself unlimited time.
Different. Again, I'll be very generous. Okay. I was actually instructed as a non-doctor what the COVID injections were. Encapsulated in lipid nanoparticle that was designed to permeate difficult to permeate barriers. So they lied to us when they said they'd stay in the arm. They knew it wouldn't. They had a study. The Japanese regulators uncovered that when they did do a biodistribution study in rats, it distributed all over the body. So that was the first lie. Didn't really talk about too much about the toxicity yet of the lipid nanoparticle, but it goes all over the body. So I was aware, and again, that this was not a standard.
So this is what he's saying. These I think this is what he's talking about here. These are things that would spread to other areas. That was, I guess he's talking about the heart and myocarditis. I don't know anything about these. I'm not well studied on all these things. I didn't pay attention. I couldn't cover it here. So, I know of it. My wife would tell me things, and these are the deaths that are attributed to these things, Tylenol, that are spreading to other parts of the body.
Standard vaccine. This isn't a attenuated or dead virus that the body reacts to. This actually hijacks the cell, has the cell produce the spike protein, which is toxic to the body, which means the body attacks it. Again, I'm a layman, but it's pretty simple for me to understand this. So I was aware of this like in October. So I'm watching Vayers, and so I'm publishing these charts, and I'm being censored. I see the next chart, chart number 2. This is the full history of Vayers and the number of deaths being reported associated with the vaccine. You got a couple hundred a year until 2021, and yikes, 21,725 deaths worldwide. Why? And everybody's saying, "No, this is safe and effective." The vaccine injured were being gaslit; they weren't being treated. They're still being gaslit. There is no. By the way, there is no compassion, Governor. I could fill this room with photos of people who are dead because of the COVID injection. I could fill the room. And that is being denied. That is being denied. It is being denied. And these people haven't been able to get help. I held an event in Milwaukee in June 2019 and 2000.
So I don't know how well this is acknowledged. I could ask the, Chat GTP or the Google version. And they'll go through the various different arguments and the different points of view about this thing. But I think everybody at least now accepts that the vaccine that was promised did not deliver. Like it didn't, what was said it was going to do, which was get rid of COVID. And when Biden said that we have a pandemic of the unvaccinated and they were basically murdering people, I can play that compilation when we're done with this here. I can just put it on the end of the video because, many of you guys have seen it a number of times. but I'll put it on the last thing before I close out here. I'll do the, I'll say the, be grateful thing, and then I'll put it after that, if I remember. But you guys probably seen it because I've shown it a bunch of times. But they were treating the unvaccinated, the vaccine hesitant or whatever, the anti-vaxxers, like they were Typhoid Mary and were spreading this thing. No apologies, because that turned out to be not true. And then the things that they promised that the vaccine would do turned out not to be true either. And so what was the real fucking agenda then? If they are lying to you and they make mistakes and they don't, even now it's still not, fully admitted to, right? This guy has been against it since the beginning. He's a senator from, I believe, Wisconsin. And, he's a chair of this committee, but he's somebody that, obviously was into this long before most people. And he's been saying these things, and other people. I don't know how much of a truth there is. I know that he's, a Trump or whatever. But, this is a big deal. Like, admit your mistakes and apologize, right? To the people who were disenfranchised, to Kyrie Irvings and all the rest of us, right?
21, and all the vaccine injured, those women, all they wanted was to be seen and heard and believed, and they are not to this day. Okay? So again, they're not the ones politicizing. They just want to be helped. They want compassionate doctors to treat them, to recognize what caused their illness, not gaslight them, not deny that it exists. But anyway, so you take a look at this chart, and they're still denying that this, nothing to see here. This is safe and this is effective. Okay, next chart. This is the current VAERS chart. 38,607 deaths reported worldwide associated with the COVID injection. And we know VAERS dramatically understates, by a factor of 10, 100? We know it understates it. 9,228 of those deaths are occurring on the day of vaccination, the 1 or 2 days. Okay, I know VAERS doesn't prove causation, but man, that's a correlation we should have been looking at, but they ignored and they censored. But enough of that. Dr.
Yeah, that's, nobody gives a shit, right? Like, that's the sad thing about humanity, because this thing will just totally happen again. I mean, if there's people who are affected, if you're affected by it, you're still pissed. Everyone else has moved on, right?
McCullough, please, in my layman's terms, I just kind of laid out the harmful mechanisms of this injection. Can you and Dr. Vaughn, because I think you've both spoken to this, again, in layman's terms, talk about why this caused so much harm in so many different ways because of the biodistribution. Dr. McCullough.
80% of Americans took a vaccine. 20% didn't. 20% did not take a vaccine. The vaccine was never safe enough for me to take. Messenger RNA, devised by Pfizer and Moderna, has been chemically modified to be unassailable to enzymes in the body to be broken down. The messenger RNA is found in the human heart of people who die after the vaccine. It's found in the brain. The spike protein is found everywhere in the body. 3 studies now show the spike protein is circulating in the blood for 6 to 9 months after people take the shot. This part of the virus, the lethal part of the virus, in the vaccinated, it's circulating in the blood. And then they take a booster, they get more circulating in the blood. It is a killer protein. It cannot be safe. It was not safe by design. Safety trumps efficacy. We can.
Okay, well, maybe it was designed for something else, right? Like population control, allegedly, or something like that. Why would they do that? Why would they do something? Why would they inject something that isn't safe, doctor? Please tell me.
Cannot tolerate false drug claims. And we saw a poster behind Senator Blumenthal making a false drug claim that vaccines saved millions of lives, specifically the COVID vaccine.
I thought that was Blumenthal that spoke up, that fuck.
Let's take a look at that. When someone signs consent for a vaccine, Senator Blumenthal, does the consent form say it's going to save their lives? Of course it doesn't. It's not on the FAQ. There's never been a prospective, randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial ever showing that COVID-19 vaccines reduce mortality or hospitalization.
Yeah, Senator Blumenthal, take that, motherfucker. How much money are you getting from Pfizer, motherfucker?
There's not even a valid non-randomized study. Thankfully, COVID mortality went down for 3 reasons. Because we all got the infection, vaccinated and unvaccinated, so we developed population natural immunity. We developed early treatment. Credit to Operation Warp Speed. We used all the Operation Warp Speed tools, additional drugs.
Don't credit Operation Warp Speed. Fuck you.
We treated patients with multi-drug protocols at home so they don't go to the ER. So Governor Green never saw the patients we treated because they were successfully treated at home. And the third reason is the virus mutated to a much milder form.
Yeah, it's that. It's really the first one and the third one. It wasn't fucking Operation Warp Speed. You know, these guys, they're all fucking Trump shills, right? They're just, you know, they'll tell you partial truths. You know, fuck these guys. Anyways, hopefully I'll remember to put the compilation at the end of people shitting on anti-vaxxers. Okay, here it is. This was recommended to me by YouTube.
2020, Jake, you interviewed Joe.
September 2020, she said.
In September of 2020, Jake, you interviewed Joe Biden. You asked him point blank about his health. You said, if you're elected, you would be the oldest president ever. The American people have been...
Okay, so Katie Couric has got an old woman's voice, right? I don't know how old she is. She must be in her probably 70s now. I don't know, something. But...
lied to before by presidents about the president's health. FDR, JFK, Ronald Reagan. We don't know still what happened with Donald Trump and his visit to Walter Reed last year. Will you pledge that if you're elected, you will be transparent about your health? What did he say to you, Jake, back then?
He said, yeah, he interrupted the question to say yes, that he would. That's actually the very end of the book is that scene, is him promising that he would be fully transparent. And to be honest, like...
Okay, so 2 things here. You know, these guys suck so bad at their job because, you know, they say that they're being factual. Like they're saying that they only report facts, but that's not true because they put out bullshit statistics. You know, they're given things that are factual by companies and the government, the 3-letter agencies, CIA particularly, and these other agencies, and you know they claim it to be fact when it's clearly not. But you know, for him to pretend that this is like he's like, you know, he interrupted and he said he was going to be honest. Of course, he wasn't going to be honest. He wasn't being honest fucking then. Like, you know, first of all, in 2020, you could already see that he was deteriorating, and everybody fucking knew it. And so you're a lying piece of shit for pretending that question mattered, because he was already being deceptive about his health. And it's pretty clear now that he had prostate cancer. I mean, you know, not factually, but just practically. You know, just logically and practically. And, you know, so this is just a silly statement. Like, he said he was going to do it. And then he says this thing, and to be honest, which nobody should ever say. Because if you're saying, and to be honest, what you're saying is, you're lying at other times. Like, you know, I'm going to be honest now. To be honest, I was bullshitting you before, but now, to be honest. You know, why do you even have to say that? You should be honest all the fucking time. Especially if you're a reporter. Like, this is just how bad the fucking media... You know, Jake Tapper is slightly better than the rest of the CNN people. You know, his personality sucks, but, you know, he asks a little bit tougher questions, and he's a little bit more resistant. But if he was a true reporter, he would have said in 2019... this guy's fucked in the head. You know, he has some kind of dementia, and he shouldn't be running for president. But he instead asked him this goofy question, knowing full well that they were already covering up his health, because he was already the oldest president. All those other presidents and presidents throughout history and leaders, they don't want to panic the markets. I mean, there's good reasons why they don't tell you the truth about the president's health, because, you know, anything can cause a panic. And so, you know, they're lying to you for good reason, because people are so fucking sheepish and so emotionally unstable that any kind of news, that's why they don't tell you when there's a disaster coming. You see this in disaster movies. You know, it's partly because they have lied to you and indoctrinated you and turned you into, you know, chicken littles. And it's also because you've been turned into chicken littles that people are going to panic. Look at what happened during COVID. And so, the whole thing is just admitting what I'm saying all the time is that we're fucked, right?
That's actually the very end of the book is that scene, is him promising that he would be fully transparent. And to be honest, like, obviously we had all seen him older in the 2019-22 campaign.
No, he was fucking senile. I was walking around challenging people to fight. I mean, everyone saw it. Like, we all fucking saw it.
He seemed fine in that interview. I only had one more interview with him in 2020 where he seemed like 20 years older, but still functioning.
Yeah, but there's a fluctuation there. Like, it doesn't matter if there's coherent, lucid times when a person is, okay, let's say you're going to have someone have a driver's license, right? And they're having moments where they have hallucinations. But they're 99%, like 90% of the time they're fine. Or 97%. 3% of the time they have hallucinations. They still can't fucking drive because at some point that 3% is going to be 5% and that 5% is going to be when they're driving. Or that 3% is going to be when they're driving. They're going to hallucinate while they're driving. It could be through a school zone and they're going to plow into a fucking school bus or a bunch of kids or some other place. And, they might be fine the rest of the time, but it doesn't matter. You can't drive anymore. Because there's always a chance, you're going to have an epileptic seizure or something like that, right? Doesn't matter how great you are. It matters that you are having issues that make it impossible for you to do your job. What if Joe Biden is having one of these moments when there's like he has to make a decision about launching nuclear weapons or something like that, right? He can't do the job. Like that would make him not be able to do the job. All those health issues, all those deterioration of any kind, any senior moment, any glitching out, you just can't do it. Like it's not a job you can do if you're impaired. And so what you're saying is he has to have other people there that are doing the job for him when he can't do it. You have people who aren't elected making decisions for the president because he's impaired in some way. And as those senior moments, as those dementia moments start becoming more and more prevalent, more and more frequent, then he's going to, be relying on other people all the time to make decisions for him, to the point where they weren't even reading the bills or telling him the truth, and he was signing everything with an auto pen. And so that was prevalent. That was obvious in 2019. And so it should have been, this guy can't do the job. It wasn't like he was so special. He was such a great politician that he had to be president. Like he was already a reject from 3 presidential elections. So, what the fuck are we even talking about this for, right?
But what we learned in our reporting was that starting in about 2019, 2020, if not before, after the death of Beau, there were basically 2 Bidens. There was fine, salvageable, fine on the stump, Joe Biden.
Yeah, fine. Like not great, fine.
And then there was non-functioning Biden.
Yes, we saw that. I mentioned it all the time. You learned it after. You've learned it 4 years after, when people were willing to talk about it. I saw it, and I wasn't even around. I never met him personally. I could just see it from the videos. So, like, Jesus Christ. Like, it's just, like, this is what I'm talking about. These guys are always late to the party, and when they get there, they suck. Like, it's not that they're just late, but they underperform once they get there.
The non-functioning Biden is the one who couldn't remember the names of top aides, who lost his train of thought in a way that was disturbing. We all lose our train of thought, but beyond just normal losing your train of thought. And a Joe Biden who was addled. And that non-functioning Biden, who I did not see really in 2019, 2020, started showing up more and more behind the scenes, really in a...
We all saw him in 2019 and 2020. We saw him when he was, like, he looked like a deer in fucking headlights. And we knew it when they hid him away during COVID and they wouldn't let him campaign. Like, you guys should all said, we see that he's having senior moments, he's showing signs of dementia, and now they're using COVID as an excuse not to run him in a campaign. He had, he did better than expected at debate performances. They gave, he had drugs, right? He had pills that he would take, in certain moments that would help him be more lucid, but he couldn't take them all the time. And so it wasn't like he could, and even if he could, that's still masking a problem.
Pronounced away in 2023, 2024. And that's what Alex and I learned. He was not transparent about it. He violated that pledge to the American people.
Did he? Did he lie? That's crazy. You know, for a guy who plagiarized other people's stories in his presidential campaign and had to apologize and tell everyone how dumb he was for doing that, and all these other things that he did that showed that he was a lying piece of shit, and stuff he did with his son Hunter Biden. That he was, you know, he's a politician. They all fucking lie, and they're all cheats, and they're all fucking have poor ethics and these things. Wow, it's crazy. He lied. I can't believe he lied. Gee, what the fuck are you talking about, bro?
And in fact, there was an infrastructure around him that worked to hide it.
In September of 20.
Just so lame. Look at this guy. This is Richard Blumenthal, the guy he was called out in that vaccine hearing. But look at this. Yeah, just look at this guy. He's waiting for Pfizer to stick its dick in his mouth. Some metaphorical Pfizer dick.
This private secret dinner in which individuals who have put money in Donald Trump's pocket get access to him is maybe the most corrupt of all of the corruption.
Donald Trump's dinner is an orgy of corruption.
She always has these weird sexual references. Remember her husband patted her on the rump? That was great. You know, they suck so bad because this is wrong. And this guy, like, just this is a new guy they have on there. He's very like, they're just so unnatural. Like, they can't talk like a normal person.
Lawmakers using some
inauthentic,
colorful language to describe President Trump's private black tie dinner last night for the top investors in his cryptocurrency meme coin. One of those investors, a Chinese-born crypto entrepreneur, posted this video giving us an inside look at the exclusive event. CNN has learned
a lot of Chinese people there. At least they're showing all the Chinese people.
That the 220 wealthy guests dined on filet mignon and halibut, and that the president gave a 20-minute speech. Here's a bit of that.
I know we paved the way for the strategic reserve to acquire even more Bitcoin in the years ahead. We have a strategic reserve. I also created the United States digital asset stockpile so the government can leverage the power of crypto assets for the first time ever. You know that. Genius. And it's really becoming powerful.
The White House says the president attended the event in his personal capacity. But critics, like our next guest, says the dinner presented foreigners with the opportunity to purchase access to the president. With us now is Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut. Senator, thanks so much for being with us. I want to play for you some sound from the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, specifically talking about Trump's presence at this dinner. Let's listen.
So I'm showing this because what Trump did here, no president should ever even do. You know, Trump is the only one with the audacity and the just being a total scumbag that he would try something like this and do it. Like, it's just wrong. Like, it's just so corrupt. It's so, in your face, right? It's so flaunting, the corruption and monetizing your position as president. It's just so bad. It's kind of funny it's so bad. Like, it's the kind of stuff that Trump does. You're like, holy shit, I can't believe he's doing that. And these guys can't cover it in a way without just being so sucky themselves that it gets diminished and it'll disappear. Like, Trump is not going to be held accountable for this. This is why I was saying during the election that Trump had acted such a way and they covered him for so long that everyone just got, okay, that's how Trump is. And it was just accepted that this is what Trump is and this is what he does and we can't do anything about it. And that's what they realized and everyone else, all the Democrats. And so they just have to endure Trump because there's no mechanism out there. There's no checks and balances. And Trump's going to do whatever the fuck he wants, including running the country into the ground at the behest of the fucking controllers. And these people can do nothing but, celebrate the fact that they were finally right about something. Right? Like, that's all this is, right?
The president is attending it in his personal time. It is not a White House dinner. It's not taking place here at the White House.
Senator, should the U.S. president be allowed to partake in a function like this during personal time?
The function reflects the scam. And the scam is...
Yeah, that you took millions of dollars from Pfizer. These are just scammers talking about other scammers. So, like it's just fucked. So this is the gumball guy. I'll show that clip again. He used to count Trump's lies in gumballs. Now he has his own show. He's one of my favorite CNN guys. He had a closet full of those metal shelves you get at Walmart that you put together, and they're on wheels. Not Walmart, but you might be able to get a Walmart, but Costco. And we've had them for years, my family and I. They have these metal rods with little plastic clips, and you put they're circular, and these shelves. So he had these rolling shelves filled with gumballs, thousands of them. Each one was supposed to represent a lie of Trump, and he isn't doing that anymore, right? Because they would have, somewhere in CNN there was a whole closet full of gumballs. It was a silly idea because, gumballs is one of the best impulse foods. Like when I know that I don't want one of those gumballs and I don't need one. It's going to hurt my teeth and it's shitty sugar. Like I can get good gumballs, like organic ones. You can get them at fucking Amazon or whatever. But, and I've done that for trips when we're on the airplane and enjoy them. But, as your teeth get older, you just can't have shit like that, right? But still, when I if there's a supermarket that still has those old gumballs and candy machines, just from my little kid days, every time I go buy gumballs, I want a gumball, it's just there. And so you don't want to associate lies as gumballs because gumballs are a good thing. But, Trump had at least two major things last week. Well, there was the airplane, which was completely fucked. Getting an airplane from a foreign government that's supposed to support terrorists, like what they call terrorists. And, Trump getting as a personal gift to him that was going to be Air Force One, which was so much conflict of interest. And then this crypto dinner, and then what he did with the South African president and just getting caught, like making things up and not knowing what he was seeing and doing poor research and getting things wrong. And that's just 1 week. And by this week, these stories are already forgotten. Like it's moved on to something else, right? Like that's how bad this is. And they have no answer for Trump. Like they can't stop him. And they're not even really trying.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa is being praised for how he handled himself during President Trump's Oval Office meeting. Ramaphosa and his delegation visited the White House on Wednesday, hoping to stick to the topic of trade agreements. Instead, President Trump continued his practice of using the Oval Office news conferences as opportunities to try to intimidate or embarrass rather than welcome, show diplomacy. Trump brought out visual aids meant to back up his false claims that white South Africans, Afrikaners, the farmers there, are being persecuted. Ramaphosa, chief negotiator of the end of apartheid, kept his cool. Tensions between the two countries were high long before Ramaphosa arrived in Washington. In February, Trump issued an executive order freezing aid to South Africa over some of the same claims that he brought up this week. In March, Secretary of State Marco Rubio...
Okay, so one of my viewers reminded me that a lot of this had to do with the fact that South Africa was backing Palestine because of the apartheid they had suffered through. They were backing, Palestine because that's what's happening to them, right? And so, like, that became something where they were put on Trump's shit list because his handlers are Israel, one of his handlers. So that's a part of it.
Rubio declared South Africa's ambassador to the U.S., Ibrahim Rasool, persona non grata and expelled him. Well, Ambassador Ibrahim Rasool joins me now from Cape Town. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for being with me. I want to talk a little bit about this meeting in the Oval Office and then look ahead at the relationship between the U.S. and South Africa. First, President Ramaphosa said that it was not dramatic, but there are plenty of people who characterize it as an ambush of your president. What's your view of what happened at the Oval Office?
No, thank you very much. I think that the idea of an ambush is fairly accurate in the sense that you don't expect a president, you don't expect diplomacy from a superpower.
Yeah, like that's what Trump does. Like, you can throw out everything you knew about politics other than the corruption and the stupidity and the lying, and the bad hair.
Descend into such a haranguing, hectoring, blustering engagement. And so in that regard, when you come there with a decent demeanor, you don't expect it. But I do think that I agree with those who say that the South African delegation led by President Ramaphosa was united, was focused, was diverse, covering all opinions, But there was
Okay, they got something with Elon Musk here.
Of white South Africans. Let's play that. This is from Elon Musk and also from a representative of the Department of Homeland Security.
There are now 140 laws in South Africa that give that basically give strong preference to if you're a black South African and not otherwise.
There's been over 140 laws enacted that are race-based and to discriminate against racial minorities.
It's happening.
Now, this claim appears to originate with the South African Institute for Race Relations, which has had some race-related controversies of their own over the last couple of years. But how do you defend against that claim that there are laws, 140 of them, that discriminate against white South Africans?
I think that if you consider the entire law book of apartheid, then amending 140 of them is tinkering with what apartheid meant for black people. If one of the laws says, give blacks more jobs, if one of the laws says, give blacks more opportunities in the economy, give them more ownership, give them more land, then those are 140 very few laws that try to overturn apartheid while keeping the edifice of reconciliation.
Okay, so somewhere along the line, somebody was saying, and there was the former ambassador to South Africa from America. This guy's the guy from South Africa that was here. He looks like he's a white guy or whatever. I don't know. I don't know what he is. He talks funny. He's got a funny accent. I don't know. But they said that white people are 9% of the population, own 76 or some percentage of the land. And so, then there's that, right? Like that's a minority, 9% owns 76%. So that's just crazy. And that's, whatever that is. And so, I mean, I don't know. Like this whole thing is, it's hard to fix something when it was so like evil and bad. To fix the, the effects of it, like the institutionalized rigging of the system. And so, there's just all these things that, it's hard for white people to me to argue that they don't have enough if you have 76% of the land, right? That somehow you're being prejudiced against. Like what's happening is they're losing what they had, but they have too much, right? They have too much of a percentage of the overall wealth. Okay, so then there's this.
Good evening from New York.
This person's, she's the substituting for the hammer guy. Like I didn't know who this person was because he's taking a lot of time off. She's much better than he is, but that's not saying much.
I'm Michelle Norris in for Lawrence O'Donnell. If you want to know
hammer guy,
what being president is all about for Donald Trump, the last 24 hours have been very instructive, starting with a revealing new report from Rolling Stone. Sources with...
So, it's Rolling. See, everything's been discredited. And so now that they're finally able to tell the truth, they've already fucked themselves, right?
Direct knowledge of the matter tell Rolling Stone that one of the lessons Trump took away from his previous stint in the White House is that he was wrong to leave a ton of money on the table as president.
Yeah, I totally would think there's no question. I liked The Apprentice, and I thought Donald Trump was a great character. He was a bozo and an asshole and a blowhard, totally fake. But it was funny, right? The show was funny. He was kind of an ass clown and, all of it. And he's actually, occasionally he can be funny. And then unintentionally funny. But I've seen him over the years. And there's no question the way that he talked about business and money and how materialistic he is, that he would think, oh my God, I got kicked out, I lost the election, and I left billions of dollars on the table. And then he probably saw how much other presidents, including Biden, had looted. Trump did get a lot. Like he did monetize his presidency, but now he's realizing I could have done so much more. And the Supreme Court already ruled that anything he does that's criminal, he can't be prosecuted for. So he's got a Willy Wonka golden ticket, and he's cashing that motherfucker in, right? There's no question that's the case. And we know that from the plane and the crypto shit. But it's more than just that. Like, we know that's his attitude, and he's going to get he's going to grab every. It's like he's got 4 years to grab as much shit. Like, he's been dropped down into some, buried treasure, some pirate's treasure, and he's got so much time to get as much shit out of the hole, before they close it back up when he's out and he doesn't have access to it. He's grabbing all of it, right?
According to two people who have been in the room with him in moments of casual banter, Trump has mentioned that it was stupid of other Republicans and advisors to persuade him, at least on occasion, to side with government ethicists who cautioned him from obliterating the line between public good and private gain. That reporting coming on the same night that Donald Trump held what critics labeled a, quote, orgy of corruption. An exclusive dinner gala with the president at his golf
You mean Pocahontas, right?
club outside Washington for more than 220, mostly anonymous and mostly foreign,
1.8 million per seat.
winners of a contest in which the objective was to pour the most cash into Trump's meme coin cryptocurrency. Those winners had to navigate a gauntlet of protesters outside Trump's club.
A gauntlet? I see 3 fucking people here. Look at this guy's, I don't know what he looks like. He's about to write a check or something. Look at his phone. This woman's propping up her elbow. Looks like she's got an attitude. Grifter in chief is Potts. POS. Oh, POS. Good one. It's not POTUS. He's a POS. Crypto corruption. And that's like an American flag. Like, come on. A gauntlet?
In a light rain. The White House did not
That's not a gauntlet. Come on. They probably pay. I mean, you could hire more people to fucking look at this. Oh, they're like so intimidating. I don't want to go in there and get access to the president and make bank or whatever whatever these people's motivation is. Who would dare go through such a gauntlet? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? A gauntlet of protesters. There's one people over on the other
release
side.
any details on who the invitees were. And at least one who
Look at
wanted
him.
to remain anonymous wore a mask into the event along with their tuxedo. Attendees included former NBA star Lamar Odom, who posted about
Look,
the
it's a
event on social
gauntlet.
media while promoting his own meme coin, and Justin Sun, a Chinese-born crypto billionaire whose company was under investment.
Okay, so we get the idea. Apparently the thing went really badly. I saw some video. I don't know if it's going to pop back up. It's already old news. Let's move on. But Trump is going to, he's going to fill as much of his pockets as he can. He's going to grab every little nodule he can get. So I watched this Jon Stewart thing. It wasn't as good as it could have been about Jake Tapper. And it was pretty fun. It was okay. About how Jake Tapper had promoted his book for months and then the whole thing with that and Joe Biden, the worst kept secret. I show a little bit of that on The View. I was in the car when it was playing, and then it autoplayed to this. There was this interview with this guy, Apple in China, the capture of the world's greatest company, The Daily Show. And it was a very interesting interview. This guy wrote a book about how Apple created their own competition in terms of Chinese cell phone companies who now have their technology, and also created the Chinese military and the global empire that China has become by pouring so much money into China and training so many people. And it's really interesting. Like I bought, my wife was looking for a book to read. I bought this book for her because I found I thought there was again, it's not a truther type of thing, but it's truth in it because of the outsourcing and these things. And this doesn't validate what Trump was saying because it shows you how lame terrorists are to try to fix this problem. Like the amount of billions of dollars Apple was pouring into China every year, which developed China into, into this industry. And it wasn't just Apple because they were some of the last one. He says that Apple resisted doing this, but they eventually had to do it. And so, it's like Apple is creating its replacement, like this whole thing that's happened. I mean, it's competition and America's replacement. I mean, the whole thing is very interesting. And it just shows you how they have a long-term plan, and America's just, when you become the empire, when you become the champion, when you become the king, you go into it with a lot of hunger and a lot of desire, and then you become, whatever it is, when you become successful, you get complacent, you get entitled, and you realize it isn't isn't as good as you thought it was going to be. And so that's, what's happened to America, aside from all the other things too, right? And all the decadence sets in, and, the weakening of each generation, and then your empire falls apart, and we're just ripe for the picking, and we're being plucked, right? America's being plucked. All right, so let me wrap this one up here. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting for the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.
It's science, and you shut up and wear your mask. It's science, and you shut up and wear your mask. It's science, and you shut up and wear your mask.
You shouldn't cut anti-vax people out of your life. They could be dead tomorrow. Spend time with them, call them, get in the will.
Screw your freedom.
The latest data that confirms that we're still in a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Continue to be among the unvaccinated, are among the unvaccinated, are unvaccinated. The unvaccinated, there are people who are dying and who will die who didn't have to. If you haven't gotten vaccinated, do it now. Do it now. It could save your life, and it could save the lives of those you love. This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. The unvaccinated overcrowd our hospitals, are overrunning emergency rooms and intensive care units, leaving no room for someone with a heart attack or pancreatitis or cancer. This is not about freedom or personal choice. It's about protecting yourself and those around you, the people you work with, the people you care about, the people you love. My job as president is to protect all Americans. My message to unvaccinated Americans is this. We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin, and your refusal has cost all of us. As I speak to you, millions of Americans are still unvaccinated and unprotected. And because of that, their communities are at risk, their friends are at risk, the people that they care about are at risk. But if you're unvaccinated, you're not. And you're putting yourself, more importantly, maybe from your perspective, your family and your friends at risk. Ultimately, those who are not vaccinated will end up paying the price.
You are not allowed to infect anybody just because you think you've got rights that are delusional, of course. This delusional, evil idea, you got to identify those people and bring them out into the open so you know who they are. If you're willing to walk among us unvaccinated, you are an enemy.
At this point, staying unvaccinated is like wearing a Yankees hat to a Red Sox game. You're probably going to end up in the hospital, and it's your own damn fault.
I was so worked up over the weekend about this fucking Aaron Rodgers of the NFL. I don't even know where to begin with that story. I mean, this fucking guy, I don't watch football. Sorry, I'm not a big fan. I know the guy's a real good football player. That's why they put up with his bullshit. If I ran the NFL,
he's going to be a Hall.
You came across as a national embarrassment.
He's talking to Aaron Rodgers. You came across as a national embarrassment.
There is no other way around it. It was the most embarrassing performance of Aaron Rodgers' career.
Jeopardy and possibly putting your teammates in jeopardy, to me, is selfish.
I'd give Aaron Rodgers some advice. It would have been nice if he'd have just come to the Naval Academy and learned how to be honest.
Southern California, where as of yesterday, we started giving the vaccine to kids aged 5 and up. Finally, our kids will be able to go to...
Let's see.
Woo! Woo! Oh.
I'm not vaccinated. Where are you going? I take horse pills.
Yeah, we have to wait for them to be vaccinated because they are selfishly a endangerment to other people, including staff people here. So while we're all hopeful, and I join the president in being hopeful that we can reach a place where it is safe for people to be. What is this, the honor system? The honor system as to whether somebody has been vaccinated? Do you want them breathing in your face on the strength of their honor? So let's just see. Let's just see. I mean, again, this is about science and governance. And science and governance, we have a responsibility to make sure that the House of the Representatives chamber is not a petri dish because of the selfishness of some not to be vaccinated.
Teach people common sense. You need to get she doesn't even know what else to do to get the people of her state to get smart and listen to the facts and get vaccinated so people don't die. It's like that simple. Is it not the people who choose to remain unvaccinated right now who are causing all of this?
It is selfish at this point to not get vaccinated.
If you can be vaccinated and you refuse to, that's a selfish act. You're putting other people's lives and health at risk. You should get vaccinated.
Because frankly, we know that we can't trust the unvaccinated.
Because frankly, we know that we can't trust the unvaccinated.
Because frankly, we know that we can't trust the unvaccinated.
The new cases in COVID are because of unvaccinated folks. But it's time to start blaming the unvaccinated folks, not the regular folks. It's the unvaccinated folks that are letting us down.
The people who are not getting vaccines, who are believing the lies on the internet instead of science, it's time to start shaming them. What else? Or leave them behind. Because they are keeping the majority of Americans behind.
I think I just passed a house with a Halloween yard decoration that was a bunch of skeletons burning an anti-vaxxer at the stake. I'm gonna go.
And so there it is. It says anti-vaxxer right here. Took me a while to see this. That's why I'm pointing it out. And it's got a bunch of skeletons sitting around a campfire roasting a skeleton anti-vaxxer. This is supposed to be a fire, which is pretty effed up. Like, it's really effed up, right? And what my wife pointed out was, what did these guys die from?
Not that Halloween is a contest, but they want it.
To platforms like Facebook.
They're killing people. I mean, it really, look, the only pandemic we have is among the unvaccinated. And they're killing people.
What he's saying there is that posting words on social media is killing people. And they've made this like the worst thing. That you're a bad person for posting things that aren't verified by the official story. This is a guy who droned children. He ordered the deaths of children in Afghanistan when he ordered a drone strike on an imaginary enemy to distract from a failed war and a disastrous withdrawal. And so there are horrible things being done all the time. But now they've made posting things on social media one of the worst ones. But it ended up not being true, right? He demonized anti-vaxxers and people who were posting things on the internet, and ended up being him who was the liar and the person that was putting people in jeopardy.
Effects or reactions would be most common from these vaccines?
Well, generally, the most common reaction is what you see with most any other vaccine. A sore arm, a little bit aches, you might feel a little bit fatigued and down for 24 hours to 36 hours at the most. A small percentage of the people might get a fever that would last for 24 hours. You take a Tylenol, you can take care of that without much problem. The safety of severe adverse events is really very good. In the 30,000 people in the Moderna trial and the 44,000 people in the Pfizer trial, the one we're talking about today, there were really no severe adverse events.
They didn't list any side effects. I mean, that's, a sore arm or, these things. I mean, he's talking about just how you feel after you get the vaccine, not 2 months out or 3 years out or 5 years out. But now we know that there are multiple side effects, which I'll get into after we go through these things here. We know that there is admitted to side effects, things that they're investigating, and things that are related to people dying. And one of the ways we know that they were being deceptive and not saying what some of the side effects were, because they never showed you commercials that came from the pharmaceutical companies themselves. It was social influencers or media personalities or Jojo Magoo. It wasn't Pfizer posting commercials, because if they did that, they would have had to list all the side effects, which we still don't know what those are, right? In terms of what they discovered. And it's still being studied, right? It's not even like they're fully, it's fully been vetted by even the pharmaceutical companies themselves. So this was all lies, right? Again, they lied to people and said that this thing was safe and safer than getting COVID. And, this turned out to be not true, right?
Because frankly, we know that we can't trust the unvaccinated.
It's to prevent severe disease, which we don't have data for that for kids. But I guess to me, the risk-benefit calculation looks like this. If the vaccines are safe and the side effects are things like fatigue and headache and muscle soreness at the injection site, I would much rather deal with that for a day or not at all. I mean, most people actually have no side effects. And so I would much rather deal with side effects like that, but understanding that we're giving something that is safe and that can prevent the possibility of something horrible from happening, which is every parent's worst nightmare.
The question asked by the presenter was that because children really weren't dying from COVID, why give them a vax and risk any sort of side effects and things from the vax? And she, of course, said that there was no real side effects from the vax, which we now know is completely false, right? And we know that kids, there's something like 1,500 kids or less than that was the official statistics on the CDC died from COVID. Many of them had severe health issues going into the disease, right? So what she said here is, that she's saying, well, your worst nightmare is your kid's going to die. Again, putting the fear out there. There is a positive association with the word safe. Advertisers and presenters use the word safe to get people to buy their products. Safety is a big thing with people. And when they're scared of something like they were of COVID, and they were offered something that would keep them and their family safe, and they withheld information or out lied or, just made false claims with no scientific basis and saying this would keep you safe, then people went and got the vax. And now we know that things are different. And so all these lies and deceptions, and she had the nerve to say the unvaccinated can't be trusted, right? And so the other piece to this, which we now know, and both Bill Gates, I have the memes here, I've saved these things, and Fauci have both admitted that COVID wasn't beaten by the vaccine. The idea that the vaccine would give herd immunity and COVID would disappear because everyone would be vaccinated and they wouldn't get COVID because they had the vaccine, and then, it would just disappear because no one would have it and they couldn't pass it on to other people. This idea of herd immunity through vaccination. We now know that COVID mutated itself out of existence, or mutated itself into a more safer, more contagious form, and that everyone had ended up getting it anyway. So the vaccine turned out to be relatively unnecessary based in what these guys are saying here.
In beating COVID-19? Well, sadly, the virus itself, particularly the variant called Omicron, is a type of vaccine. That is, it creates both B-cell and T-cell immunity, and it's done a better job of getting out to the world population than we have with vaccines.
I think what one referred to, what was not anticipated, was the extent of the mutations and the amino acid substitutions in Omicron, which is really unprecedented. It kind of came out of nowhere, where you have a virus that has 50 mutations, 30 of which are in the spike protein and 10 or 12 of which are in the receptor binding domain.
The thing that's important is that it appears to be able to evade some of the immune protection of things like monoclonal antibodies, convalescent plasma, and the antibodies that are induced by vaccines. That's the sobering news against severe disease. But when you get to Omicron, the protection significantly goes down.
Keeping the events that are safe and also the events that have fun for people too. We can't be canceling everything, especially if we're going to be living with COVID for the foreseeable future. I would say that if you choose to go, make sure that you're vaccinated and boosted. Make sure that you're wearing a mask, even though it's outdoors. If there are lots of people packed around you, wearing a 3-ply surgical mask. Don't wear a cloth mask. Cloth masks are little more than facial decorations. There's no place for them in light of Omicron. And so wear a high-quality mask, at least a 3-ply surgical mask. And if you're going to be visiting elderly relatives.
Recently, when you said here on CNN that cloth masks were, quote, little more than facial decorations. So, in light of Omicron, what kind of mask should we all be wearing? And were you surprised by the pushback from your comments?
Well, I was surprised because this is not the first time that I or Professor Osterholm or really any of us public health experts have been saying that cloth masks are not appropriate for this pandemic. It's not appropriate for Omicron. It was not appropriate for Delta, Alpha, or any of the previous variants either, because we're dealing with something that's airborne. We're dealing with a virus that's extremely contagious. At the very beginning of the pandemic, we didn't know about masking. And then we didn't have enough masks, enough high-quality masks for healthcare workers. And so we were trying to ration those. But then pretty quickly, we recognized that COVID is airborne.
Do you agree with the move?
I do. There was and is a time and place for pandemic restrictions, but when they were put in, it was always with the understanding that they would be removed as soon as we can. And in this case, circumstances have changed. Case counts are declining. Also, the science has changed, but rather that the responsibility should shift from a government mandate imposed from the state or the local district of the school. Rather, it should shift to an individual responsibility by the family, who can still decide that their child can wear a mask if needed.
Take New Jersey, the case in New Jersey, for instance. Their new case average is just over 4,000. Is that an acceptable number to do this, or are they projecting out to March 7th at this point?
I don't think we should be looking at case counts at all at this point, especially when we're dealing with a milder variant and when so many people were exposed to Omicron and therefore have at least some level of protection either through vaccination or immunity. The key number that we should be looking at is hospitalizations. If our ICUs and hospitals in that particular region are not overwhelmed, if they're not over capacity, we can set a number, for example, 75% or 80% full, then we should be able to relax all restrictions. And I actually believe that we should be starting to, with the first restriction removed, should actually be the restriction on children. Because while for adults, you could say, well, what's the harm of adults masking when they go into a grocery store? There actually is a harm that we should be discussing of children continuing to mask. That doesn't mean that masking doesn't have its place for children when there are very high rates of hospitalization. If we get a new variant in the future that children are particularly susceptible to, we may want to bring masks back. But we should also be intellectually honest and say that masking has had a cost, especially for the youngest learners, people with English as a second language, children with learning disabilities. There has been a cost to them. So the risk-benefit calculation has really changed.
But she's had the flu for 14 days. Should she get a flu shot?
Well, no. If she got the flu for 14 days, she's as protected as anybody can be, because the best vaccination is to get infected yourself.
And
so
she should not get it?
If she really has the flu, she definitely doesn't need a flu vaccine. If she really has the flu,
she should not get it again.
No, she doesn't need it, because it's the most potent vaccination is getting infected yourself.
The current vaccines are not infection blocking. They're not broad, so when new variants come up, you lose protection. And they have very short duration, particularly in the people who matter, which are old people.
I knew these vaccines were not going to protect against infection, and I think we overplayed the vaccines, and it made people then worry that it's not going to protect against severe disease and hospitalization. It will, but let's be very clear. 50% of the people who died from the Omicron surge were older, vaccinated.
Was the Pfizer COVID vaccine tested on stopping the transmission of the virus before it entered the market? If not, please say it clearly. If yes, are you willing to share the data with this committee? And I really want a straight answer, yes or no, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Regarding the question around, did we know about stopping immunisation before it's entered the market? No. We had to really move at the speed of science to really understand what is taking place in the market.